Losing one pregnancy is devastating, and most people chalk it up to bad luck. But when it happens more than once, that devastation turns into emotional numbness and then confusion. Because you know you're doing everything right, and yet it keeps happening. Your doctors want you to just keep trying because everything is normal. But you know in your gut, something is off and you're anxious to try again just to end up at the same place. So you start wondering if something's missing. Today, I'm going to walk you through a clear step-by-step workup for recurrent miscarriages. What to test, what may be getting missed, and how to actually move forward. I'm Dr. Cindy. My husband, Dr. Cody, and I are the doctors behind Fertility for Two. We help couples get pregnant naturally. Before you run a single test, we need to define when the losses are happening, because that timing sends you in different directions of focus. An early miscarriage happens before 10 weeks and is more often linked to embryo quality, sperm DNA damage, hormonal imbalances, and implantation issues. On the other hand, a late miscarriage happens after 10 weeks and is often linked to blood clotting disorders, placental dysfunction, and immune-related issues. Now, many of these causes give us a direction for the female half of the equation, but an embryo is 50% sperm. And in most miscarriage workups, the male side is barely evaluated. Maybe a basic semen analysis is ordered, but that's not enough. So here's the first thing to do if you've experienced any pregnancy loss. You need to add sperm DNA fragmentation testing, because sperm DNA damage is strongly associated with failed fertilization, poor embryo development, and early miscarriage. Now, DNA fragmentation is considered specialty testing, so you do have to specifically request it. If the test comes back elevated, you need to identify the cause behind that excessive damage to the guy's genetic material. My husband, Dr. Cody, has a video on DNA fragmentation, so I'll link it below. Now, the egg does have some ability to repair damage in the sperm after fertilization, but that capacity is limited. If sperm DNA damage is high, the egg can't fully correct it. Even though male factors are most strongly linked to early losses, those factors don't just disappear after 10 weeks. Sperm quality influences how the placenta develops. So in some cases, issues that start on the male side can still contribute to losses later in the pregnancy. Now, let's shift to the female side of the equation. This is where most standard workup focuses, but often it's not deep enough. In the case of early losses, the goal is to establish a baseline on reproductive hormones by running specific markers on cycle day 2 and 7 days after ovulation. Beyond that, we need to evaluate metabolic, inflammatory, and immune markers to determine the quality of the eggs that the woman ovulates. We need to assess uterine environment for implantation and see if her immune system is tolerant of the embryo. We've put together a complete fertility workup guide that shows exactly what to test, when to test it, and what optimal ranges should look like. This is much more specific than the standard range because normal doesn't mean fertile. You can get access to that below. Now, in the Fertility for Two program, we do this assessment for everyone, regardless of the history of losses, because it's crucial preconception work. We don't want to wait for detrimental results before moving forward, because prevention is the best medicine. When it comes to late-term loss, the primary focus on the female side shifts to thrombophilia, which is a tendency to form clots. During the pregnancy, the placenta depends on healthy blood flow. So when small clots form, the blood flow is impaired, which can lead to placental dysfunction. Here are the specific markers that assess thrombophilia: antiphospholipid antibodies, lupus anticoagulant, anticardiolipin antibodies, beta-2 glycoprotein, as well as factor V Leiden and prothrombin, which is factor 2 gene mutations. Another area of focus is the uterine environment, where implantation takes place. You can definitely have a structurally normal uterus but still have a hostile environment, and this can happen when the uterine lining is exposed to chronic inflammation. This can be either low grade or rampant, And what can be misleading is that most women with these issues have no obvious symptoms, or many have normal imaging. So late-term miscarriage evaluation should include an assessment of the uterine environment, and in some cases that includes a uterine biopsy to assess for CD138, which looks for chronic endometritis. This is low-grade inflammation of the endometrium, and a Receptiva DX, which screens for inflammatory patterns linked to silent endometriosis. Both of these can compromise the uterine environment and make it harder to sustain a pregnancy. Let's wrap up with some of the next steps that include both partners regardless of timing of pregnancy loss. First up is the thyroid. Research shows thyroid dysfunction in women, either overactive or underactive, is linked to recurrent loss. On the other hand, thyroid dysfunction in men has been linked to poor sperm quality, which directly affects fertilization and early embryo development. And there's more to thyroid function than a normal TSH. You need a complete assessment with TSH, free T3, free T4, TPO antibodies, and thyroglobulin antibodies. Thyroid function and thyroid autoimmunity are crucial in the early stages of pregnancy, so even mild dysfunction can shift outcomes. Another area of focus in both partners is metabolic and inflammatory signals. We need a full understanding of both partners' biological systems with key markers like fasting insulin, hemoglobin A1C, vitamin D, and many inflammatory markers, because these markers influence pregnancy outcomes, and we are going beyond the question of can you get pregnant to is the body stable enough to sustain pregnancy. Pregnancy loss is common. That doesn't make it normal. And recurrent losses are a huge red flag that require detailed investigation for both partners. So if you've experienced an early pregnancy loss, here are your exact next steps. Order a sperm DNA fragmentation test. Run cycle-specific hormone tests, as well as full thyroid panel and metabolic markers for both partners. On the other hand, if you've had a late-term loss, start with everything on the early loss list and then add a full thrombophilia panel and evaluate the uterine environment with biopsy-based testing. This is exactly why we created a full fertility workup checklist, so that you're not guessing what to test or when. You can access it down below. A structured approach is so important in fertility care because the goal isn't just to get you pregnant, it's to create conditions where pregnancy can thrive. So if you're ready to stop guessing and actually identify what's going on, you can apply to work with us through the link below. We help couples build a structured plan to address the root causes of infertility and recurrent miscarriage. Let's work together in growing your family. From our family to yours, have a fertile day.